Welcome to the Read Your Keys podcast. I am your host, Joel Lopez. If you're enjoying the content, please like, subscribe, squish, smash, and pulverize those follow and like buttons. And today, my guest is John Shoup.
That's
Met
right.
this brother on a retreat with our friend Tyler Tote. You can find him on Twitter at the Shoups. That is at TheShoups. He is helping with your marriage, raising kids, faith, finance, and health. John, welcome to the show today, brother.
Hey, it's good to be here. Good to see you again, my friend.
Good to see
Right
you
on.
again. It's been about a month, man.
It's been a
I'm
month.
missing you. I'm missing you already, man.
I am too. Yeah, I'm missing that. It was a great retreat, I tell you. And I love our little DM, that we still got going on with the group and the encouragement that's come out of that. And that was a powerful weekend. I was so pleased to be there. It really
Yeah,
was.
it was a lot of fun. I had Reeves on
Hmm.
a couple weeks back, I think.
Yeah,
Can't
yeah,
remember. Timeline is
yeah. I saw
foggy with
that one.
kids and
Yeah,
everything. It was a few weeks back. I had Reeves on, but because the cool thing was like, hey, I got to know him and talked to him for an extended period, and it was like, oh, the same thing with you was, you know, the reason I wanted you on was because in talking with you, I didn't know what your whole thing
right.
was because like I had never really interacted with you prior to actually meeting you in
Correct.
person, and then the big thing was, you were talking about family meetings, and I was like, wow, like this is something that I need to implement with me and my family.
Yeah.
And what I really liked about so the really one of the cool things I liked about you, John, was John has raised his kids. His kids are older, so you when you talked about family meetings, it was like it was like it's one thing for me to say I'm raising kids and this is how you should raise kids, right? But my kids are young. But your
Hmm.
kids are older, and then so like you had talked about family meetings, but then you got your adult kids' perspective on the family. So it's like they had gone through it already, and so I was like, wow, that's super powerful because it's not like, like I said, a guy like me who is raising kids still, and like, you know,
Yeah.
the things like hopefully the things turn out well. It's like, but it
Right.
was like you had the perspective of your kids. You asked them, what did you think about this? So how did that come about, man? Because I thought like this to me is like a super powerful thing. It's just this family meeting, this meet idea topic.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Joel. Yeah, it's one of the things that as a father, that I'm quite proud of that Debbie and I implemented. And we've been married. Just a little perspective. We've been married 32 years now. We have three boys, and as you said, they're grown, thriving men. One's 30, one's just turned 28 yesterday, and then I have Aaron's 25. Um, and so and they're doing great. And as you said, they have we have a little chapter out on how we did this family meeting, but they provided perspective, and they can reflect back on it now as grown men, realizing this is something that they're going to make their own and do with their families. I don't have any grandkids yet, but the thing started, quite honestly. It's a fascinating little story. Is that both Debbie and I are born, raised, went to college Lutherans, and we were at our church, and the pastor. I really don't know, remember exactly why, but he asked me to speak about servant leadership at one of our services, and during that, I talked about the idea of setting up some level of a family meeting, and quite honestly, at the time, I wasn't doing it, and Aaron would have been about 18 months old at that time, if that, maybe even a year.
Your
Uh,
youngest son.
my youngest son, yeah.
Okay.
So my kids were, very little. So I would say Aaron was a year, and that would make Adam 3 or 4, and Nathan 7 or so. So we weren't doing them up to that point. But anyway, I was talking about just how important it was to create structure and some way for your kids to clearly understand um, your thinking and why you did rules in your house, and also to give them a voice. That was really important. So I was talking about this, and I go, as we do oftentimes, as you talk out loud, you realize you're talking to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I stood up there and I was like, we've got to do this. And so that Sunday we went home, and I had my very first family meeting, and we stayed with those um, all the way through the kids graduating from high school and moving out of the house. And it was just a Sunday night staple, um, roughly at 8:30. every Sunday night we would gather, um, and that's how it got started. Really was that old message I shared at church, and it just created. And over the years, you make it your own, and now we had a structure that I can share with people that just was awesome. And I think any family should do it, regardless of how old your kids are, as long as they're living with you. Um, I just strongly, Debbie and I, believe strongly in the power of those.
I think what's interesting is like that what you pointed out is like when you kind of like preach or you kind of talk something out loud, it's like the cognitive dissonance. It's like, hey, I'm not doing this, but this is a really good idea, so I should probably line up with it. I think that's, I don't know, I think it might be a sign of just like a good man, right? Like I'm giving this advice because I think it's
really
good.
Doing that? Yeah.
Yeah, am I doing that? And like questioning yourself and being like, I probably have some areas where I can step up. And that was kind of one of the things that kind of stood out when I, talked to Reeves too. It was like, hey, this thing is like, I want to do well at this, and I can see that I'm giving this advice, and so I want to, my actions to line up with my words, and so I'm putting the words out before my actions even line up with them, with the goal that my actions line up with my words. So I think kudos to you first of all for that, because
yeah. Well, and along that same line too, Joel, is that when you say it out loud, you say it publicly, you have other people hear it. It creates a sense of your own accountability, because people could or should ask you, "How's that going? What do you?" And then it's like, you got to be true and real. So so saying those things and believing them, and then I had to put it into action, and I'm so glad I did. I really am, and I just love to share it with. Because I'm like any other dad was, like you are, trying to figure out this whole dad thing, and really what your role is and your job to lead your family. What does that look like? What does that sound like? What does it feel like? And for us, for me, really, it was creating structures around things that I believe strongly in, and that was the faith, the family, the finance, raising our kids, and to have structure around it. And that family meeting was such an anchor for us. Interestingly enough, we did, like, my kids are grown now. We don't do family meetings anymore because they're not here. However, every Sunday night still, we FaceTime our kids and do, in essence, a little family meeting with them. It's a check-in, and that comes out of my dad. I've tweeted about this a couple times. My dad, who's 83, still calls me every Thursday night, and he did that when I left for college, and has stayed with it for 36 years, 37
that
years.
long.
Every Thursday night at 8:30, I get a phone call from him, and it's just a check. And sometimes they're 5, 10, 15 minutes long. Sometimes they're an hour and a half, because I'll have something on my mind, or he will, that we'll work through. And it's just powerful to stay connected with your family, because, and again, it's just a structure that makes it work. It's not a random day. My kids know Sunday night that they're going to get a call from mom and dad, and what's a FaceTime, and we love it. Solve a lot of problems still.
Yeah. The cool thing too is like I never thought I was a bad dad, right? But I always had the desire to be a good dad, and I had a good dad, and I had a good grandpa. But it was like, oh, well, when you use other men as sounding boards also, you can be like, oh, like that is a really great, because like I never had a family meeting and never had that kind of structure, but it was like, well, what am I trying to develop for me and my family? Like, it was good. It was good enough, and it's not a judgment on the, my parents or anything. It was just, they didn't know, but it was like, oh, like this is really cool, and like I want to cultivate a great relationship where, I can talk to my kids on a Sunday night and be like, hey, yeah, Dad's gonna call you, like, and that you've done that for 30 years. That is, that's outstanding. You go, that builds,
quite a legacy.
Because really, who, like, I want my kids to know, like, nobody's invested in you like your dad is, right? Like, so I'm not gonna, I could possibly give you some bad advice later on, but it's never gonna be coming from a place that was not trying to, like, look out for you. And that's what you understand from, like, my parents. Like, well, the advice might have not have been the best, but it wasn't coming from a place where it's like, hey, I'm trying to screw you over, right? It's just like hey, you know,
Yeah.
you do the best what you can with how you understand the world or how it was back then,
Yeah.
and
That's exactly right.
we're moving forward. So,
Yeah.
but I think that's amazing that you had that with your dad because
Hmm.
your kids see that too, right?
That's
So
right. That's
it's
right.
it's not like okay, I have this relationship with my dad and it's disconnected from my. It's like no, my kids saw me
Yeah.
like, hey, who are you talking to? I'm talking to grandpa right now.
Yeah.
So give me a
Hmm.
minute. I'm talking to grandpa right now. So
Yeah.
I think that's even a more of a layer on top of like
Yep.
this culture that you've built within your family, man.
Yeah.
So it's
Thanks.
just big kudos to you. I mean, that's one of the things that was really impressive to me about you and when I met you is because I think when we were there, you were like, oh, I gotta go, I gotta talk to my dad. I think that might have happened where it was like, dude,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
most
It was
people were like,
Thursday. It was our first night there.
because I think most people, like myself included, it's like when I go somewhere, like I'm trying to be there, right? But
Hmm.
it's just like,
Hmm.
hey, like I'm here, but this is my dad. He gets my time.
Yeah. He
Like no,
gets
like
those.
no, like doesn't matter the what's going on around. Like he gets my time. So, because I think I forgot. I might have been like, hey, where's John at? Oh, he came back in. He's talking to his dad. Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
that's
It came
pretty
back. Yeah.
cool.
A little Wi-Fi issue. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we do. I mean, and it's simple enough too, Joel. There are times that I just can't. Like 2 weeks ago, I had an event at school. I'm an assistant principal at a K-8 school, and we were having this huge. Oh, it was trunk or treat. It was Halloween. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. It was like the 29th of October, and it was just this
Yep.
huge event. And I had thousands of, like 1,500
Mm-hmm.
people around, kids and parents. And he called me, and I said, I can't do it tonight, Dad. I'll give you a call. And he said, yeah, no problem. And so we just
Yeah.
checked in the next day. So we have.
Yeah.
I mean, it's but that night, yeah, Thursday, I knew I could separate, and I wanted him. He was super curious about, he knew I was going to this retreat, and he just wanted to hear, how I was going to go out. And one of the fun
Yeah.
things I could share with him on that is, as I've been a school administrator for 25 years. I've led church councils. I've done all. I like leading groups and whatnot. And I told him, I
Mm-hmm.
said, this is awesome. This is a group I'm with, and I'm not leading. I just get to be
Mm-hmm.
one of the dudes, one of the guys, and
Mm-hmm.
because that has, as you saw Tyler a little bit too, and you've been there. When you lead something, there's just another layer of you
Mm-hmm.
can't enjoy it quite as much as if you're just a participant.
Right, because it's
So
like,
he
hey,
was,
I'm facilitating the next thing coming up, or like,
uh-huh,
hey,
yeah,
I'm trying to oversee something
hmm,
or be on the lookout for,
right,
whatever might needing.
yeah,
I'm kind of on the lookout, but when you're
yeah,
one of the guys, like,
so,
pff,
yeah.
nice.
So he was excited to hear that I could just be. So that was cool. But yeah, been doing it a long time.
What like the going back to the family meetings
Hmm.
when you first started, like what was the goal of it? Was it just to like build connection within the family, or like what was the goal you would say for the
Yeah. Well,
meeting?
the goal. Well, a main goal was the voice in the family structure, in a organized way. That was one. Two, it was to reiterate our faith,
Mm-hmm.
and we would do that sometimes subtly and sometimes very directly. And the third one is our kids were getting a little older. The two little ones practice. You're going to this in our calendar, our family calendar of who was doing what, and was an organizational tool along that way. And then from there into um, various sections in there. I don't know if maybe I'll just kind of walk through it a little bit. Is this probably a
Yeah,
good time to do that? Just kind of
yeah.
how we do that. So so the so the faith part, we would start every meeting with we'd open prayer, and usually when you're doing prayer, especially with your kids, they see you praying or you're leading the family prayer around dinner, it was, but we rotated who opened with prayer, and it was just a million. And so it wasn't just me or it wasn't just Debbie. The kids would do it, and it was a simple little prayer, just welcoming God into this meeting
Mm-hmm.
with our family, and that. And then we would go into the highs and the lows of the previous week, and we always had a rule around that: is that you had to have at least one high, one highlight, something good. You could share as many negatives if you wanted, but it couldn't all be negative. And we would
Mm-hmm.
just go around, the circle, and everybody had to share along those lines, and it was really fun in that. you would learn stuff that had happened during the week that you completely, as a dad, were unaware of. Something that happened at school or at a practice or with a friend or whatever it may have been. Um, and that was a piece I added in because I like it. It was an easy way kind of to start the meeting, and people could talk about. Quite honestly, a couple of my boys had no problem talking about things that frustrate them or,
Mm-hmm.
were bummers. So it was an easy way to kind of get the conversation started.
Yeah.
But then what really became, Joel, my favorite section of the meeting was what we did next after that. And that was we did a section on compliments. I call them compliments and or thank yous.
Mm-hmm.
And the general rule about that was you had to give a genuine, and genuine means, timely and like, dude, I like your hair today. To me, that's not a genuine compliment. It had to be
Mm-hmm.
something real, genuine, and to somebody in the circle, and or at the meeting. And we would just so you know, too, we every once in a while, if we had family that was like my mom and dad, if they happened to be with us on Sunday, they joined the meeting. They joined our family meeting because they were, and we had a family friend. This is a long story, but the 30,000 we went on vacation with this family friend. We kind of embraced him into our family, and I was teaching him. I know he was about 15 years younger than I am, 17. Kind of how to be a man, how to be a strong man and a good father. And he started going to church with us, and he started coming to our family meetings. And but anyway, if you were in the circle, you had to give a genuine compliment or thank you to somebody in the circle at the meeting. And again, I was amazed at stuff that was happening in my family that I had no idea about. Just because you can't be everywhere, you can't be all knowing. And there were some powerful things that were shared in there that were heartfelt and real, and again, everybody did that. And then this is where the kids got. So that's, they had a voice there, but this is where we really want the piece that was where I knew I started that I wanted them to have a voice. Is we did a section called Issues and Concerns.
Hmm.
And I originally started this so the kids would have a voice, but it really helped Debbie and I become better parents.
Mm-hmm.
And you would bring up anybody could bring up something in there that was an issue or concern. And the issue could be simple, like we named our pets in there, we planned family vacations in there, we talked about stuff that was going on at school. It was an issue for the child. But we would also be held accountable. This is, the kids sometimes would say, "Hey, Dad, you said we were going to do X last week, and we didn't
Mm-hmm.
do that."
Mm-hmm.
So that was an issue for them. And
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to, own it and wear it and say, "You're right. We were going to go get those shoes, or we're going to play ball, or whatever it happened to be." And the kids learned over time they could do that. It was a free space to hold us accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but where it helped Debbie and I become a better parent, this little section is what happens in your household. Your kids frustrate you because they're not cleaning their room, they're being too loud, they're whatever. There's something that's frustrating you, and then sometimes it's right to jump on it in the moment, but oftentimes it can wait. It's not this thing you have to correct right there, and it might not just be one child. It could be apply to all of them. So Debbie and I had a little thing on the fridge, and we would just write down, we need to bring this up at family meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would deal with whatever that might be in the family meeting, our concern. And it also did the opposite or the same with our boys, is because they would come to and say, "Hey, Nathan's bothering me because he's doing this and that, da 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 da." And I said, "Bring that up at family meeting." And instead of dealing with it, if it was a big enough issue for them, they would bring it up at family meeting to discuss it. If not, they figured it out on their own. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't, they didn't need me or mom to solve that particular problem. But um, by Debbie and I having that pause, because there be times you get fired up, that, with
Yeah.
one or more of your kids,
Yeah.
um, and like I said, every once in a while it was okay to deal with it in the moment, but we would deal with it often in that family meeting, that issues and concerns. And the rule on that was you didn't have to have an issue or concern. You could pass on that one.
Right.
I'm fine, I'm good,
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
and we would move on. And then once we finished that, I'm gonna see. I want to make sure. Oh, we did. We had our kids had chores and expectations. We call them expectations as opposed to chores. And those, from cleaning their rooms to taking out the garbage to shoveling dog poop to whatever, there was clean the bathroom. We had a series of them. And so the meeting started at 8:30, and by 8 o'clock, I would always say, "Hey, 30 minutes to family meeting," and the boys knew that if their chores or expectations weren't done by then, they weren't going to get their weekly allowance.
Mm.
And by God, they got them done. They got hustling if it whatever they had to get done before the meeting. And so we would just, Debbie would have the whatever cash that they had, and we did it based on age. We had a multiplier based on their age. That seemed fair and logical to us. Why the older boy needed the money a little bit more than the younger boy. And so
Mm-hmm.
as they got older, they just had a built-in. But for us, that worked great. And then we would didn't always do this. I wasn't consistent with it. This is one probably if I was to go back and do it, I'd be more consistent. But it was trying to relive what happened in the sermon or the children's sermon for church. So a faith conversation about the lesson or some sort of
Mm-hmm.
reading of the Bible. And we had some books and things that I would do. My favorite one I do remember was, I don't know if you've seen the toothpaste one. It was just, what you say, once it's out there, it's out there. And we
Mm-hmm.
gave the kids tubes of toothpaste and had them squish them on a table and then told them to put the toothpaste back in the container. And they're like, you can't do it. And we said, this is like what words, when you say things, they're out there, you can't put them back in. So you have to, that was one little lesson that we, tied in with the Bible lesson. But again, I didn't do those as consistently as I wish I would have in reflecting back. And then we did the weekly calendar. That was one of the staples why we started. Debbie had this big whiteboard and a pen, and she had Monday through Saturday on there or through Sunday. And
Yeah.
we would just go through, okay, what's going on Monday? Oh, Nathan's got this, or Aaron's
Mm-hmm.
got this, and who's going to take them? And, we would write them down, on this calendar, and we'd go through the whole week. And by the end of that section, then the calendar was full for the week. At the end of and Debbie always was the scribe for that. I just
Mm-hmm.
facilitated the conversation. And then after the meeting was over, she'd hang that calendar right by the door out. As everybody left every day, you could, for me and Mom, it was more, you could see it. Okay, this is,
Yeah.
Dad's got this. I got a sporting event that I have to
Yeah.
supervise. And it was easy for the kids to kind of keep track of the week that way as well. So, and then we did a closing prayer, just like we would open. And again, want anybody in the circle, I would usually pick someone,
Mm-hmm.
Nathan, will you close? And it was just a simple little, thanks, the good Lord for, blessing our family and providing, this time to do this, and, hoping everybody had a great week. And, we'd pray sometimes for somebody that was hurting and it was our family meeting. And they'd take anywhere from, we could do that in 20 minutes to the longest usually was about an hour. Sometimes if we had some little meaty
Yeah.
conversation that we had to get into, they very rarely went that long. So that was family meeting.
But I would think that the boys were older when you'd be able to go to an hour-long meeting, like
Oh, yeah.
like not with the
Not when they were little, yeah.
18-month-old for
No.
an hour. Like that's just too much.
Too much, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as they
side
got
note,
older, yeah.
side note, John, you just watched the banging because I'm picking up the banging on the mic.
Oh, sorry about that.
All good. I wanted to go back to to me, the family meeting. The more I think about it, it's like so multi-layered. It's not just like an organizational thing. Like going back to there's not a lot of times now when a family will kind of just sit down and be together. And this is just us being together and being intentional about a family. You hope sometimes the schedules all line up so everybody can sit and eat together because that's a nice time, right? But the family meeting, it's hey, you don't want to have the distraction of food either. It's I'm trying to eat and I'm hungry. It's
Right.
that those are good things too. But to me, this is one, a separate, much more intentional and powerful, because I always thought that it was important for us to sit down and eat as a family,
So
a
do
couple
we.
of times a week. But this was something different because you'd try to have conversations with them, but I don't know. It's just different. They're hungry. They're
It's
trying
different.
to eat, and
I
then
agree.
you're trying to serve, and hey, I
Yeah.
need this. But the sitting down and be I don't know. It's just I'm dad. I am the head of the home. I am you're because I think a lot of what happens now is that kids get like delegated out for stuff. Like you get delegated out for sports, for school, or you know,
Yep.
even at church, right? Like you go to
Yep.
church and it's like the Sunday school teacher is the one that was
Teaching the lesson. Yeah.
teaching me, and where I saw faith, but it was like I didn't see it in my dad.
Right.
This is that opportunity for
Yeah.
them to see like I am the high priest of this house. Like
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Spiritual
I
leader.
love.
That's our job.
I am exactly. I am the spiritual leader. I pray over you. We can pray for each other. So all those things that kind of go with what you cultivated at the family meeting.
Yeah.
But I think even what you said though, like your main goal was that your kids have a voice, because that was always something that was important to me too. It's like you are a part of this family.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I am the leader of this family, but I need to hear what you have to say, because what you have to say is important to me. Like I very much want to cultivate that with my kids. Like, hey, something is good, something is bothering you, like come talk to me. So I think that is a very intentional way of being able to build that in, because what you know, the kids are gonna do whatever they do, what they wanted, but it's like, hey, I did what I could so that you could tell me when something was bothering you, or that was something was happy with you, or you know, I was doing something, you know, whatever. Like I tried to produce that environment to be able to have that. If it didn't work, I'm sorry, but I did what I could.
Came from a good place. Yeah.
Yes.
And you know, along those lines, two little things reflection off of that is, one, the family meeting was never done at the dinner table, even if dinner wasn't being served. It was in a separate room away from, because I agree, we try to have as many dinners together as possible, and it just was not the right environment. And I very intentionally didn't have our meeting at that table. We were out in the family room or the living room, you know, on couches and in that setting. So that was one, was an intentional piece. But the other piece that I think you're right is about solving problems is my boys then got to see me help my other boys solve problems, talk through them. And so they may not have been dealing with the same issue, but they could hear us talk through it. And that was just, again, was never the intended benefit, but as, I don't know if you've heard this phrase, unintended benefits, with, you know, that, oh, wow, that's cool. I didn't intend for that to happen, but this grew out of this. Oh, my phone's ringing. I'll turn that off. So, yeah, I love solving problems with the kids and those concerns through their voice. And they did. I know my boys talked about how important that was. Like I said, it was like naming the family pet. It was a simple little thing, but they had a big voice, and we would vote on it. And it was very intentional, opposed to a random conversation that you would have. You know, the drive-by meetings you have all the time in the hallways and the bedrooms.
I think it was funny, you know, of the unintended benefits, because I've always heard unintended consequences.
Yeah.
You know, like you think of like, oh, you know, unintended consequences, but it's like, oh, there's unintended benefits. Like it goes the other way too. There's
It
you know,
does.
so that's really cool. I like to, so like from the moment that we, you know, got back from the retreat, like I started implementing the family meetings into my house. And so we've been doing them for about 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And so I'll send a message to you guys like, hey man, like I did it again. Cause like to me, that was like a huge takeaway. I have, you know, kids that are going, I have 4 kids. So like they're going all places.
Right.
And it's just like, to be able to set out the week and to be able to be like, okay, this is what you got. This is what you got. You know, it makes my wife's life so much easier.
I'm sure.
Because I am a planner, but I plan my own stuff.
That's
and
right.
so it's like, okay, like you take care of that stuff. I got my own stuff. So like I would plan a podcast or something, and she'd be like, I guess I got to get the kids out of the house then, huh? And it's like, it doesn't really work, because I'm always the guy, like, you know, I want to do what I want, and like not to be I don't know, inconsiderate. It's just like, oh, I wasn't thinking about it, because I was thinking like, hey, I was trying to match up my schedule with this guest or whatever, blah 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 blah. So here it goes. But like the family meeting kind of sets it up where, okay, like it makes her life easier, and you know, when I make her life easier, like that makes me happy. Like my goal is never to make her life harder. Like I like it when, you know, she's feels like she's being helped, and you know that makes her feel really good, and that makes me feel really good as a husband. That you know, she gets that. And that was a big thing, because you were telling me like, oh, we have a calendar, and it's just like, yeah, we have a calendar, and it's just like, this is what we have going on, and it lets us, you know, plan out our week. And it's just like, oh, are you picking up so and so? You're like, yeah, I'm picking up so and so. So those things, like, you know, if you don't have kids, might not seem like a big deal, but when you have kids and they're in their activities, and you know, we have, you know, quite a few kids, it's just like this makes things so much smoother. in the
Yeah.
family. And I'll ask my wife, like, because I kind of always do come up with like ideas and stuff like that. And so it's like, hey, like we're implementing this family meeting stuff. Like, how do you like it so far? She's like, oh, I'm really like it. It's like, all right, cool. Like because like I was gone for like 2 or 3 days. That was not easy for my wife,
Yeah.
to
Oh, I'm
be
sure.
alone. So it's like to have a takeaway to bring back, like,
Takeaway.
hey, yeah, it's like how is this working? Are you enjoying it? It's like, yeah. And then from there we're able to kind of because that's taken care of, we're kind of able to go and speak about like higher order things now, because like, okay, she's not so stressed because kids got XYZ going on and this kid's got XYZ going on, and just like the scramble for it, it's like, okay, like we know what dinners are gonna look like, we know what the schedules are gonna look like, what my schedule looks like. Oh, let's fit in something for you to go
Mm-hmm.
get your workouts into and be able to have some time for yourself. I mean, it's not the most, but
Right.
it's something where it's like, hey, like, um, you know, she can see that, hey, I'm trying to give her space to do things, because it's not like, oh, it's not always all about me, but
Right.
also the kids being able to pray for each other, because that's a big thing for me too. It's like you don't always have to wait for your dad to pray for you, because like they always want me to pray for
Right.
him, which I understand, but it's like, no, like you guys can pray for each other, because I'll tell them like, hey, one day daddy's not going to be here, like
Mm-hmm.
you guys need to be able to do these things for yourself. And that's why I really like what you said about like, because I can get on them in the moment for something. And Reeves and I were talking about that being like slow to anger, because like I can come down and
Yeah.
come down hard and be like, you
Mm-hmm.
need to take it, because I want to correct it, and I want them to know like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
this is not okay. But to be able to take that step and be like, okay, you know what, we're just gonna put this on the issues and
Mm-hmm.
concerns, and we'll talk about it when I'm not so worked up about it.
Right.
But then everybody else can also hear about it also too. I think that was like a really
Yeah.
high level dad move.
Yeah. Exactly right. That's slow to anger, because that's it. It was a check for us. Now we would sometimes tell the kids, "Hey, this we're going to bring this up at family meeting, just so you know. This is
Mhm.
so they might simmer on it, and that's fine
Mhm.
too. But
Yeah.
you were much more calm, collected. You got your thoughts clear, and um, so yeah, I loved being able to do that. And again, we just had to have a sheet of paper up so we would
Mhm.
remember it. We would just write it down, whatever the issue was. Um,
Well, the thing too is that you and Debbie would be able to talk about it too, right? It's like, hey, we
yeah,
have a couple
right.
days,
We
like
were
we
lined
saw
up.
that,
Yeah.
so like, hey, we can kind of talk through this, because, believe it or not, even though you've been married for 30 years, or you're 15 or 20 years at the time, you're still gonna have disagreements about
Yeah.
what discipline would look like, or
Yeah.
what the consequence should be, or if it was a big
Tons of
deal,
that.
you
Yeah,
know.
that's a good point. That happened all the time. We would behind the doors. We'd make sure we were alone. And oftentimes, it was as you said, I was the hard one, and she would
Uh-huh.
have that softer look at it or a different perspective, and it would
Mhm.
tone me down, and it was
Mhm.
always good blending of our parenting styles.
Mhm.
Yeah. The
Kind
other
of.
thing I was going to tell you too that was
Huh?
kids holding on that calendars. Um, we would put our weekly. We wanted to have a weekly date, and so we would make
Mhm.
sure we figured out how to get that on there. And the youngest boy, Aaron, he was the one that he was like the weekly date police. He would make because everyone we wouldn't do it sometimes, and he would
Mhm.
hold us or say it didn't count whatever we did. We'd walk to the mailbox together, and she
Mhm.
it doesn't count, Dad. You can't use that. So okay, I appreciate that. But that was like one of the pieces that we made sure we put on there, and the kids saw that we were doing that. And like I said, the youngest one was just, man, he was hard on us just to make sure that we did it.
I love that you said that, because I actually had like a note written to myself about like the importance of like who comes first, your wife or the kids, and I think you just kind
The
of answered
wife,
that
yeah,
right there. But I mean, can you want to go and talk about like why that's important? Because to some people that seems counterintuitive. It's like, my
yeah,
kids can't take care of themselves. Like my husband or my wife, they can take care of themselves. Like, but I don't like, for guys like
yeah,
us, it's like, yeah, this you take care of
yeah.
your wife first. But can you go ahead and expound a little bit
Well,
on
yeah.
why?
Well, and that's who your first commitment was too. That was the the promise, the covenant to care for in sickness and health, and that if you don't have that right, you can't do the other right. If and the kids would see that that dichotomy or the split or the anger or the frustration. So if that's not right, and if you're not taking care of that and working on that marriage, then to me you're going to struggle as a parent. it's almost, you could have a split household of sorts. And
Mm-hmm.
and we loved and cared for our kids deeply, but there were many times that, we would try to make sure, not try, that we were doing stuff together and caring for one another. And it didn't have to be big things, but the weekly date night was one of them. Um, the going to, helping out with, just carrying the kids around. I could say, no, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take care of getting the kids to here and here, or
Mm-hmm.
so she didn't have to. And it's a subtle little thing to say, I care deeply about you and your time, and or pushing so she could go have a weekend or a date with her girlfriends.
Mm-hmm.
No, man, you
Yeah.
go do that. Women talk about stuff that women talk about, and
Yeah.
and um, and so to me, if you don't have that right, if your cup's not full there, then you
Mm-hmm.
can't fill into your kids like you should, or could, even at a higher level. So that was just never even like you said, for us, it just seems so natural. And I do struggle with some of these younger parents that say, no, we're going to do kids first, and that's, they can't care
Mm-hmm.
for themselves. And I get that. I understand that. But to
Yes.
me, they're forgetting the most fundamental reason why the kids are there. It's because of that marriage. It's because of that union. And A has to be right so B can
Mm-hmm.
be right.
Well, it's just like the kids are the fruit, and the marriage is the
That's
tree.
right.
So
That's exactly right.
you gotta water the tree.
That's right.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll go back to the family meeting because it's a challenge for us to have date night. Like, first of all,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, when can we find a sitter? And then it's like, okay, well, who's a sitter that can handle like all of our kids? And so like, oh, and who do we trust? So it's like, it's
Mm-hmm.
that part. So just like this past week, like it was like, you look through the calendar, it's like, okay, I'm doing my workouts here, you're doing your stuff here, and it was like my wife was like, oh, like this thing came up with my friends, I'd like to do it. It's like, look at the calendar, like, yeah, go ahead, like, yeah, we're clear. I don't have anything going on because like I'm a guy that I have like so many thoughts going through my head that it's just like I get cluttered. But that kind of helps give me like put things down and put things out. It's like, oh yeah, like that's totally, you can do that. And then like, because there would be a tendency too sometimes, it's like where like I would say yes because I wanted to say yes because I knew that she needed it, but it was a challenge for me because it was like already had a busy day or
Right. You
whatever,
had to
and it's just
change
like,
that. Yeah.
like, so you do it like with the best intentions, but there's still like that,
Yeah.
like I wish you didn't because the stuff is a mess and now I got to do bedtime or whatever. But it was like with the
Mm-hmm.
family meeting, it was like, no, like we're clear. Look, I got to do my things over here at this part of the week. So like, yeah, please go do that. And so you're able to,
Yeah.
I was able to do it with more of a cheerful heart than I
Yeah.
had in the past, if that makes sense. I don't know if
No, it
you probably
does.
like.
No, I do. And the other thing I'd say sometimes, I think, and I love hearing people trying to do date nights, but I think sometimes we overthink it.
Mm-hmm.
Because date night is simply you and your spouse together, focusing on each other. And
Mm-hmm.
that's it. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean you have to go out to dinner, you have to go to a movie. And this is where my
Yeah.
son would try to hold me account, like, no, that didn't count. And I say, actually, it did. And it
Mm-hmm.
might be as simple as you've got the kids, um, maybe you have them in bed. Maybe they're already in bed, or maybe they're working on stuff in the house, and you just go to your bedroom and
Mm-hmm.
close the door. You're going to have 15 minutes together of just you two focusing and just talking about whatever it is that you want to talk about. Something's on your
Mm-hmm.
mind, or you just want to hug each other or pray for each other, and that can
Mm-hmm.
be date night. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be, but it's um, as we loop back to that marriage being so important, it's just you have to commit. I don't have to that. Yeah, that's the right word. I think I'd say that time and energy to keep that fire and that energy there. And that's why Debbie and I also, I know I didn't talk about this at the retreat, Joel, but Debbie and I went, I guess we did it twice. Yeah, twice. We did some groups off of the second one. We went to a thing called the Weekend to Remember. That was super powerful, and it was just a marriage conference. And it's not because we were struggling, but it was just, again, building up our marriage, um, and talking about things that we wouldn't maybe naturally talk about around the house. And
Mm-hmm.
I was telling my now married son Adam, we just went to his wedding in Brazil, and he
Mm-hmm.
actually is. They're living with us right now, and his wife sees this, and I said, this came out of this weekend to remember, and it was a simple little thing. It's like after dinner, I'm generally the one at the putting the dishes in the dishwasher and doing all that cleaning while stuff's getting put away, but I have that spot. And when I was done with that, the dishwasher was loaded and running. I often would just, okay, I'm done. I've done my part.
Mm-hmm.
And this weekend, remember one of our conversations was things that Debbie, I don't know, frustrated, but she needed more of me. And it was a simple question. It was a simple question she needed me to ask. And it's, what else do you need me to do after I'd finished all the dishes? And sometimes it's put a dish up or sweep the floor, or can you do, take the garbage out, or something I might not have seen but was on her mind. Because I was just, you're in your own moment. You're being like, oh, okay, I did my job. Woohoo.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Good for me. I'm out.
Yeah.
So I still, to this day, every night, because of that simple little comment she made, it is ingrained in my DNA now. As I just look at her and says, what else do you need? And 9 times out of 10, nothing else. But it allows her to say, I need you to do this and this, without feeling like she's nagging on me.
Yeah.
And women just don't want to feel like nags to their husband, and we have to create that avenue. And that was a simple one that she needed me to do, that still do.
You know what amazes me, John? It's just like those little things that you can just do that add to just like that means it's a little thing to ask that, and it's a little thing to be like, okay, like I got to put this thing up or whatever. But it improves her life exponentially more than the 1% that it takes for you to ask that question. And it's just those little things that just I guess if you're not married, you can't really understand it, but it's just like, this makes my life so much better. This just makes my life so much better. You think like you need to buy new things. It's like, no, I just need you to ask this question for me, to give me the space to be able to just check around and be like, okay, like you missed this, or I need help with this. Please help me with that. And I think like marriages are kind of built on those little, like, hey, if you can just do this little 1% more thing here, like this will be just like, we can be a 6 marriage, we can be like an 8, if you just were to able to do those things that, and like that just improves the house, right? Because people say happy wife, happy life, and I kind of go back and forth with that now. I understand where it's coming from, but it's like, no, it goes both ways. But if you can take care of that part too, like it just, the kids, you have peace in the house. Like the kids can know that they can rest in their own home. It's not the walking on eggshells. Because I would, like I understand, like, because I can be the yeller in the house and be like, dude, like there's no peace in the house because you're the one that's raising the temperature in the house. So those things I think are just like so fantastic though. It's like, what else do you need me to do? Like, I did my part. Like I did my part, but like, what else do you need me to, what else do you need me to do?
Yeah. And it goes to, you'll see me on Twitter. It's a simple little word, but I preach it a lot, and it's called oneness. And that's what that marriage needs about, is that simple oneness, is 2 people working as one, whether it's around faith, our finances. I got a whole, we do a ton on finance, making sure we balance the budget and the checkbook, but it's being aligned and unified, and having those little date night moments, and those conversations help you stay focused. Because when we got married, I don't know if it was in yours, but and we still have it in our house, it's called the unity candle, where we each had a candle, and we took our 2 lights and we lit a single candle, and that was, the union of one. There's one light in this household, and little comments like that, where you, as the husband, making sure that her light is also being still lit as union. It's so simple little questions. It's making sure the front door's locked. Like, so that's another one. Every night I need to lock, so she doesn't have to worry about it, and she knows not to have to ask me about that one. But there's still times, when we're grocery shopping, we're out and about, what else do you need? It's a simple question, and it just takes that whole burden that your wife might be feeling, because they don't want to be nags. They do not want to nag us. They don't like that. They don't.
The good ones don't.
That. No, exactly. And so we can help take that off by just asking that simple question. And for me, it's. I mean, I ask it more than that, but that's the time I make sure every night I ask.
Yeah. No, that's funny that you say that about like being at the grocery store and be like, I'm here already. Like, is there anything that we need to pick up so that way you don't have to make a trip out to the store? Because
that's right.
You know what? Like, yesterday, I had a lot of like I did a lot of like picking up and dropping off. Like I did like actually I did all the picking up and dropping off. And I remember my mom when I was a teenager be like, "Oh, I'm tired because I've been driving around all day." And I would be like, "What are you talking about? Like you just sit in the car driving. Like how hard could that be?" You know? And then yesterday I was wiped.
Yeah.
I'm about to call my mom now that I say that. So I was
That's right.
wiped.
Give her a call. I get
I
it,
was
Mom.
wiped. I was wiped because I had like done all the picking up and dropping off and stuff, and it was just like I thought back to when I was a teenager, and my mom was like, "Oh, I've been driving all day. I'm tired." And I was like, "What are you talking about? You just like sitting driving. How hard is that? Like I like driving, no big deal." But it was just like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I get it now." It was
Yeah.
like so it was just like one of those things though. It's like if you have we have young kids. She's always driving. If I can just pick up a thing from the store so it saves her a trip for
Yeah.
it's one of those things like, hey, that gave her an extra half an hour to do something else because my wife has other things that she wants
Yeah.
to be doing. So
That's
that
right.
the family meeting to me is like I'm very gung ho about this now because like in the short time, John, from when we spoke about it, it was like, oh, like this is a thing where I feel like I can implement it quickly. I mean, it's changing. Like we're still new at it, but it's like I've seen the benefits of it very quickly because
Yeah.
we are a family. So I might be different from a married couple that with no kids.
Yeah.
That might be
Right.
different, but
Right.
right now in this season, like it's been
That's cool.
super super helpful for us.
And I tell you that warms my heart. And this really, um, why Debbie and I started our Twitter account. This was part of what we wanted to do. We felt, we had something that had worked, and this was one of the pieces of it that we wanted to just share with young couples and young families,
Mm-hmm.
and it was so it to me. I'm gonna tell you at that retreat where we made our commitments, what we were going to be accountable to, and so many of the young dads like yourself said, we're going to do that family. Awesome. I mean, it just warms my heart where people can see the benefit of something we did and can implement it and make it their own. So I love hearing that, Joel. And yeah, your kids probably aren't, jumping for joy to come down to the meeting, but that they come, they join, and I'm sure they are getting benefits that will last them forever.
Well, the thing too is I mean, we kind of we had talked about an allowance, but it's like, well, like it'll be nice, to have that kind of carrot that kind of brings them into
Yeah.
something that like, okay, like here's like if I'm looking forward to this and I'm kind of tuning it out, like like kids aren't paying attention, but they're still paying attention. Like if you repeat the message over and over enough, it's like they might not be paying attention now, but like I'm pretty sure your kids did, but it's like that's why I'm so impressed with what you carry a lot of authority because of what your kids are saying about the family meeting. That was like the big thing. Like
Right.
I'll go back to like I could talk to you about raising kids, but my kids aren't raised yet. Like I have
Right.
lots of ideas about raising. Oh, I think I actually had a tweet. It's like I knew the most about raising kids before I had them.
Yeah. Before I actually had them. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so like you have raised your boys to men,
Hmm.
and they are saying this was a good to me, and that was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
that carries a lot of weight, and so that
Yeah.
that was another thing for me. It was like, okay, like I want to do this. All these things sounded great without having that, but that just adds
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much validity,
Right.
weight to
Yeah. It's
what
just not a
you've
guy
done.
talking. Yeah. Just throwing something out there.
Yeah, it's not like an
See what
18-year-old kid
sticks.
telling me to do a family meeting, right? It's like, dude, you don't even have
You have
kids.
no idea.
You
Yeah.
have no idea. You
Yeah.
have no idea.
Yeah, no, yeah, I appreciate that, and the chapter that you're referencing, the boys speak, wrote a little. I thought it was important to do that,
Hmm.
and so I appreciate you, recognizing that because it was important to hear their voice again,
Hmm.
on the value of that.
Which is really cool. And I think like the compliments, like there is nothing like hearing your kids compliment each other. Like
Hmm.
it's one thing where they compliment you because it's like, oh, like that I can buy you things, or I'm the fun one, or just whatever. Like I'm dad, I saw and she's mom, so we
Right,
I'm glad that they recognize that we do what we can for them.
right,
But for them to recognize each other because they can be at each other's throats and
yep,
then be like, hey, like I saw you did this. Thank you for doing this thing. It's like,
yep,
oh yeah, those are the things that's gonna build. Because like my goal for my kids is like I need you guys to be strong on your own without me having to lead it all
Right.
the time
Yeah.
because like those are your teammates, right? Those are
That's
like
right.
we look out for each other. We want you guys to go through, and if something happens, like you guys are gonna build that support system because I think there's a lot of like uh sibling dysfunction now. Like
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't think that siblings are very very close anymore. Like you know job opportunity comes and you move away and you have your, especially for boys, right? Like you become the man of the
Right.
house and you have your family, and so you go and you're taking care of your family, and I get all that stuff, but like man, like I just really really want you guys to build more than that. And I think that's why we wanted a homeschool too, was because um it's like I don't want you guys to be away from each other all the time. I want you guys to build a
Right.
relationship where you have conflict, you're able to resolve it, and you guys,
Work through it. Yeah.
eventually, hopefully, enjoy each other's company. And if you don't, like, that happens, that's fine. But there's a mutual respect where it's like, hey, we know we can help each other, and that can go from there.
Well, the likelihood, quite honestly, Joel, that you're doing this, and if you had that section, the compliments and thank yous, and those got stronger and deeper as the kids got older, exactly as
Mm-hmm.
you're anticipating that.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was driving somebody around or compliment a true compliment about something they had seen their brother do.
Mm-hmm.
I had boys, and the way boys often share affection for one another is ribbing and
Mm-hmm.
teasing, and but
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't allowed during this. And the best testament I can have right now, again, I just say that I have three grown men who beautifully, who stay in close contact with one another. Even though I've got one in Tennessee, I've got one in Vegas, and one here in Reno. They all three are tight. They are loving towards one another. They are in. We were at this wedding last week in Brazil for my middle son Adam, and you could just see it. You again, and just nothing warms your heart more as a parent to
Mm-hmm.
see your kids that close as grown men. One's married, one's engaged, and one uh, is not. He's the 25-year-old, but so and like my two older boys do a weekly podcast. I know I told you about that
Yeah.
on Reno Sport every every week, and it's fun to listen to their banter, and still you can just hear the love in their voice
Mm-hmm.
towards one another. And that all, I think, the foundation was poured during those family meetings, and being able to share that true affection and true joy for your sibling, because that's not what you want. You do not want your kids to be grown kids and not get along,
Yeah.
because you want to have them around for Thanksgiving. You want to have them around,
Yeah.
and not only that, you're raising them to get along, and you're trying to blend all that. And we're just blessed beyond belief in that. And I do. I there was a lot of things we did, but family meeting was one that I just was such a good anchor for us.
I think back, you think back to like what's the first and greatest commandment was, love God with all your heart, and the second is love your neighbor. And I think
Hmm.
that's kind of like, that's like that's not an accident, but I think that kind of applies to like what gives God
Hmm.
joy. Because I know as a father, like when I see my kids being just good to each other, no prompting. Like they don't even know that I'm watching. It's just like, oh man, I
Yeah,
could just take this
just
in
melt you. Yeah,
all the time. Like man,
yeah.
just like you are just like my like you can't explain like how good that makes you feel as a father. So like I
That's
always
right.
think like I didn't like I knew God, but like being a husband like teaches you another layer, and then being a
Hmm.
father just teaches another layer. It's like, oh, when you guys are good to each other, like that just like warms
Nothing
my
better.
soul. And when you
Yeah,
guys are fighting, it's just like it breaks my heart when you guys are
yeah.
fighting. But there's a dad part of me is like, hey, well, you got to fight and you got
You got
to
to work it out.
figure you got to figure it out. But you very much understand like why like the fatherness of God when you actually
Right.
become a father and you
When
see
you
your
right.
kids interacting and
Hmm.
being good to each other. And I think the family meeting is just a great facilitator of that because, like you said, you have your issues and problems. It's like, because I think some families, it's like, hey, like, we don't talk about our problems because we're perfect. And it's just like,
Yeah.
good luck, man. Like, that's going to suck for your kids because they're not going to know how to resolve issues. They'll just like, hey, that whole you're dead to me thing, and then just
Yeah.
cut you off. That's how we deal with it. It's like, no, like I won't, you can tell me, like I'll tell my kids, like you can tell me when daddy, you see some daddy doing something, and I'll tell you either like, yeah, you're right, or no, you just don't understand. Like, you wait, but you're gonna get an answer.
Yeah. You brought up I think it's important to share this because it was you continue to learn lessons on how you did and from your kids as they get older. And one of them, I tell you, Joel, that was fascinating to me was that conflict obviously happens in a marriage and it happens in with your kids and blah, blah, blah. And we dealt with a lot of those in family meetings. But one of the things we never dealt with in family meeting was a conflict between Debbie and I. That was not where you did that. That was not a discussion for the kids to watch that.
Mm-hmm.
And we did like a lot of families try to, I think, ones that are thinking about it do is when you have a disagreement with your spouse, you go have it behind closed doors. You go, have it out of earshot of the kids. And we didn't have a ton of them, but we'd have the same arguments about, money or sex or whatever it might be that any couples do.
Mm-hmm.
But we would do them behind closed doors. And so, quite honestly, our kids never argue, never saw us do that. And one of my boys, when he was having a little trouble with in a relationship and arguing, he thought this was like the end of it. It was not going to work because we're arguing, because he never saw my dad argue. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, dude, I'm sorry about that a little bit, because that is a natural part and we just didn't make it public. But reflecting back, we might have been more willing to have at least a not heated, but an argument in the kitchen in front of the boys and do the hug and the kiss, and we're all good. And they could see that, that we could have civil discourse, still have our oneness. But we were very intentional not to do that. And it was like, that was the unintended negative consequence, I guess, of something we were trying to do good. Not that it was awful, but I might have been willing to have maybe a little bit more public disagreement.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like, in the course of things, like, there could have been a lot worse things, but you're glad that he was able. But see, the thing is, he was able to still come to you, and ask the question, and you'd be like, "Ooh, like, sorry, like."
Yeah.
So I don't know if if you tell your other boys this also, but but just that the point being is like you're not going to get it all perfect, right? But the connection to communicate is there. Like that's the
right.
success, right? Like I didn't realize it. Like I did this thing with the best of intentions. And I'm seeing that maybe that wasn't the best course at that time, but you're not married yet, and it's like oh, like, no, it's like, it's okay, Papa. Like, hey, it happened a lot. Like, no. So sorry that I didn't let you see. Like, I didn't know, because you probably didn't see your parents argue, or you don't know what your wife's experience was. We kind of take a different philosophy, like, depending on the intensity. Like, like,
right.
this is fine, or it's like, oh, okay, like, you guys need to, you guys need to go. But I mean, you can't know anything, but it goes back, like, man, that connection with your boys, that they can come and ask you, that is the answer.
That's
right?
The key.
It's not,
that
it's
is
like,
the answer, right?
I can't have the answers to all those things, but here's a process, here's a line where we can figure this out.
Yeah. And I know my boys, and they still do have no problem asking us questions stuff like that.
And I think that's why, like,
I love it.
Divorce is so painful, and like the consequences of it are like far-reaching, because I think it breaks the generations, the connection between generations. Like my grandfather reached down to help me, like, just my dad helps me. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna reach down to help my kids and my grandkids. But that connection that you have, like, that there was like a divorce issue, like a lot of that trust and stuff, that maybe that they'd you have all these family meetings and stuff, and then that breaks that whole right. thing. And I mean, not to say that it can't be restored, but just in general, you could see that, like, sons don't trust their fathers, like, because it's like, well, like, you left mom, so like, why should I trust you? So I think that's why this is just another thing where it's just like, if you can solidify all these things, really solidify the marriage. I think, like, the date nights, the family meetings, the, hey, what can I do? Yeah. That one other thing. I mean, I'm just a huge proponent of the family meetings. Like, the more I talk about it, and in my experiences with it, just for this short time, it's just like, man, it's been such a blessing, John.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'll give you another little one about what else do you need. Here's one that your bride will love is just every chance you get, keep her car full of gas.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't have to mess with that. That's another one that I try to do as much as I can.
I can't believe that you ever go to the gas station, you see like a guy sitting in the passenger seat, and then she gets out.
I was like,
The
what?
woman gets out and pumps gas. It's like, dude, what?
What are you
What?
doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, that might be the same thing with the same guy doesn't understand why like
Yeah.
you love your wife more than you love your kids.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. I hate seeing that too. Yeah.
What's it called? So I think we're coming up on time here, John.
Hmm.
So we have you here. Oh, any last words you want to kind of wrap up before we go here?
Oh, not really, Joel. I just I appreciate our brotherhood, and I love that weekend, and I love that you're embracing the family meeting, um, and I just as Debbie and I have gone through, we really did try to create structures around all those various faith, whether it was going to church on Sundays and finance. We were always everything was together. We didn't have separate accounts. We balanced the check, but it was all about that oneness, and um, I to be around and to share our story because we're simple people, we're ordinary people, nothing extraordinary, but we made sure, and I made sure that she was second, and we're proud of where we're at. Looking forward to grandkids at some point, and then share that legacy on even further. So. And appreciate spending the time with you. I hope these podcasts continue to grow for you. You're
Mm-hmm.
a awesome guy and an awesome dad. I'm blessed to have you in my friend group for sure.
Appreciate it. And I will say this: you say you're ordinary, but I think you do the ordinary things extraordinarily, and that's the difference. These are things that any man can do
Hmm.
to help their families, but it's just it's a 2% thing that can really, I think,
Yeah,
supercharge your families. And I think
I
better
agree.
better families, I'm all for it. So
Yeah,
really
well said.
appreciate you coming on and getting to know you, and just thanks so much, John, for all this. You can find John Shoup at the Shoups. He runs that account with his bride Debbie.
Hmm.
He's helping you with your marriage, raising kids, faith, finance, and health. And you can actually, I'll put the link for the family meeting on the show notes. Also, you can find him on Twitter. You can get it there. John, thank you so much for coming on today, brother.
Hey, you bet, Joel. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me. It was
All right,
awesome.
take care.